Okay, in this explainer video, we're going to look at volume meshing in ANOVA and some of the options available in release ANOVA 1.11 that perhaps are a little new. So, starting off, I'm going to set the volume mesh to polyhedral so we can also go out and look at some of the open foam options. So, starting with ANOVA, in this model here, I have 3 volumes, just a very simple box with a couple of dividing surfaces. So volume 1 is on the left, volume 2 is on the right, and volume 3 is in the middle. So the first option that we can look at is controlling just whether ANOVA meshes the surface mesh or the volume mesh. In our case, I'm just going to choose the surface mesh and the volume mesh with no prisms. We'll just look at the volume mesh without prisms for the day, just to keep things a little simpler. So the first option is that if I do choose the topology mesher, base mesher here, you can see that we'll get all 3 volumes all meshed. I do a little cut plane through it just to validate that we do have a volume mesh. We can see that. So what happens if you only required 1 volume mesh? Maybe you've got a very complicated geometry. It takes a little while to create the whole volume mesh. You could have hundreds, if not thousands, of volumes, and you only want to mesh one of them. In ANOVA now, we now have this option here. If I highlight the volume on the geometry tree, I now have this option here, mesh this volume. And now you can see only volume 1 is meshed. If I wanted to, I can mesh some more. Just open up the volume so we can see. So now mesh this volume. There's volume 2. And finally volume 3. Now, when it meshes just a single volume, it does understand that the other volumes meshing has to be there. So the boundaries are all going to be connected and conformal, so they're not going to be mismatched in any way. So it's meshing it individually like that is exactly the same as meshing it all 3 at once. Now, if we go over to the mesh tree, another option that's available to you is that maybe for your solver you want to combine some volumes. We can now do that from the tree. Just highlight the volumes that you're interested in, right mouse click, and you'll see you can merge all the other volumes and leave those separate, or merge all the select volumes. So for example, I've selected volumes 2 and 3. And now we see in our tree we have volume 1 and volume 2. Just to be clear, if I can hide the surface groups, turn on volume 1 mesh, and now turn on volume 2 mesh. Now if we're going out to open foam and we want to apply boundary conditions to these new meshes, the boundary conditions and properties key off the geometry side of the model for the boundary conditions and the groups. So at this point, you'd come up here and go mesh to geometry. By doing this, this will transfer the topology here back to the original geometry so the 2 are consistent. So when we come to do the open foam, for example, and set up properties, you'll see you only have 2 volumes, which is what we want, not the original 3. So another thing we can look at, if I'll close out this model and bring it in again. Another thing we can look at is sometimes, for example here, the middle volume, which is volume 3 if we remember, sometimes you may want to bring this as a cell zone in open foam. And with cell zones, you may want to have it as a structured or a swept mesh. So what we've given you the option here directly in the tree is you can pick as many of the volumes as you want, and you can say make this volume swept, provided it is sweepable, of course. And so now if we come back to the meshing tree and we make that, we get the swept mesh. And notice we've gone back to the tap mesher because I didn't press the polyhedral mesh. If I'd done the polyhedral mesh here and then meshed, and so now we have the polyhedral mesh everywhere. We have a nice swept mesh for our cell zones, all set to run on OpenFOAM. Now do a quick slice through there just to validate that what we've got, and you can see you have a nice layered mesh for your cell zone. So that's some of the extra new capability in Nova 1.11, and that's the end of this explainer. Thank you.